everyone. Today we're going to talk about 2.7, solving absolute value equations and inequalities. So the first thing we need to think about when we're thinking about an absolute value is an absolute value, first of all, is our two lines. And if I take the absolute value of -3, hopefully you remember that's 3. But also if I take the absolute value of +3, that's also 3. So when we're solving an absolute value equation or inequality, we need to take into account that what's in parentheses could be positive or negative. So when I want to solve the absolute value of x plus 4 equals 1, I need to solve two separate equations. So the first equation is going to be exactly as it is, just without the absolute value sign. So it's going to be x plus 4 equals 1. I subtract 4, and x equals -3. My second equation that I need to solve is if the interior, if what's inside my absolute value is negative. So I'm going to say -1 parentheses x plus 4, close parentheses, equals 1. So that's saying that what was inside the parentheses is negative, because keep in mind, the absolute value of -3 is 3. So now I solve that, and there are two ways to solve that. I can distribute the -1. I get -x minus 4 equals 1. Then I add 4, and -x equals 5, divide by -1, and x equals -5. So the solution set is two values, -3 or -5. And if you do a quick little check, if you put -3 in there, it's -3 plus 4, absolute value, so that is 1. Then if I put -5 in there, that works out to be -1, but it's inside the absolute value, so it's also 1. Example 2, write an equation involving absolute value for the graph. So what I want to do is I want to find the point that is the same distance from -2 as 4. So what I like to do is I like to count how far apart are -2 and 4. So they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're 6 apart. So the point that's in the middle, equidistant, is 1. So I'm going to say the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 3. And it's 3 because it's 3 jumps away. So the value, it's always the absolute value of x minus the middle, close the absolute value, equals the distance. So let's try some examples. So I want you to pause, and I want you to try 1, 2, and 3, because that's just evaluating. So evaluate means substitute and simplify. Okay, so hopefully you paused and did these. Notice number 1 equals -2 because I substitute -2 plus -3. Then I do what's inside my absolute value. Then I take the absolute value. So I get the absolute value of -5, which is 5, and then 5 minus 7 is -2. Number 2, I do the same thing. So that's the absolute value of -3 minus 3. So I do -3 minus 3, which is -6. Then I take the absolute value and I get 6. Number 3 is a little tricky because there's that minus sign outside the absolute value. That's like saying -1 times the absolute value. So I still substitute and I evaluate what's inside my absolute value first. So -2 plus -3 plus 3 equals -2. Then it's -1 times 2 because the absolute value of -2 is 2, and it works out to be -2. Now we're going to talk about solving. So if I have y plus 3 equals 2, I need to separate that. So I'm going to do y plus 3 equals 2. And then I'm going to do -1 parentheses y plus 3 equals 2. Because whenever I'm solving an absolute value, I have to take into account that there's two solutions always. So I subtract 3 both sides here, and I get y equals -1. Here, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to divide both sides by -1. because that's -1 times that, which gives me y plus 3 equals -2. Then I subtract 3, and y equals -5. So the answer is the solution set -1, comma, -5. So I want you to pause and try 5 and 6 on your own. Okay, so hopefully you paused and did that. So again, the most important thing with the absolute value is creating two equations. So number 5, my two equations are 5y minus 2 equals 7, and then -1 parentheses 5y minus 2 equals 7. When I solve those, I get the solution set of 9/5 and -1. Number 6, my two equations are 2x minus 1 equals 11, and -1 parentheses 2x minus 1 equals 11. I solve those and I get my solution set as 6 and -5. So number 7, to graph this, I find the value in the middle between -4 and 4, which is 0. So that's the absolute value of x minus 0 equals, how far from 0 is 4 and -4? 4. So number 8, I find the value that's in the middle. So -1 is 2 away from 1. 3 is 2 away from 1. So that's the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 2. Number 9, I have -7 and 1. So those are 8 apart. So half the distance is 4. So the value in the middle is -3. So it's the absolute value of x minus -3, which is really just x plus 3, equals 4. So number 10, I want you to pause and see if, or let's do 10 together. Tolerance in engineering is an allowance made for imperfections in manufacturing. Manufacturing oven specifies a temperature difference of plus or minus 15. This means that the temperature inside the oven will be within 15 degrees of the temperature it's set on. Write an absolute value expression to express the maximum and minimum temperature inside the oven set for 400. So this is our middle value. So we're going to do the absolute value of x minus 400 equals 15. And then we can go ahead and solve that. So pause and solve it. So when we solve our absolute value equation, we get that the oven can be between 415 and 385 degrees.